welcome to Fantom Sports. I am Benjamin Parker, your host for the night. We are here ready and loaded to talk about the NFL schedule that just came out earlier this week. We are going to talk about everything from individual matchups to quirks to wish lists, you name it. We are going to cover it tonight. We have three people from Fantom Sports with us. Let me introduce them one by one. Shane Davis, you are up first, my man. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you? I'm just hanging out here in good old Idaho.
I am excellent. For those of you who don't know, and if this is your first time watching Fantom Sports or reading Fantom Sports, Shane is the very much acclaimed and well-known owner of Fantom Sports. And Shane, it is a privilege to have you on board tonight, man.
I'm happy to be here.
Shane's aching a little bit from football today, like legit tackle football today. So, if he says something that's weird, it's probably concussion or something, right?
Yeah, I'm concussed.
All right. Robertson Vier, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Tell everybody kind of what you do for Fantom Sports.
I actually just joined on recently. I am the official Washington Commanders writer for Fantom Sports, and I write a couple other things for NFL. And I'm glad to be here.
We have a website, Fantom Sports does tons of articles. Not just NFL, but all kinds of different sports. So by all means, after this video is over, after you're done watching it, run over to Fantom Sports website, check it all out. There is a boatload there. We will try to talk more about that at the ending. But Robertson, it is a privilege to have you on board tonight, man.
Thanks, Ben.
Last on the list, certainly not least, the Corvette man, Anthony Jobaggy. Anthony, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I wish I was dressing a little bit better than like with you guys, but I just forgot. But I'm excited. I'm a sports writer for Fantom Sports, and that's really all I have to say right now.
The truth is, when you're rich, you don't have to care what anybody else thinks about how you look, man. I mean, right?
That's true.
Okay.
That's true, but
okay.
I'm not rich right now, so
we're going to make it happen. All right, let's get down to business. I want to get each of you's thoughts very briefly just on the overall schedule, something that either jumped out or something that you liked or something you're excited about. Robertson, I think I want to get you first here on that. Just real quick, general thoughts on the schedule.
This year, there's a lot of also one of the ending weekends and Christmas. So that's interesting. I feel like we haven't had that in a while. And yeah, I feel like, and also since Amazon has kind of rights for Thursday Night Football now, feel like there's more Thursday night games as well. So just kind of like it used to be just Sunday, Monday, and now throughout the week now.
Totally agree. I'm old enough to remember. I'm going to show my age here a little bit. I'm old enough to remember when you had no Sunday night football, you had no Thursday night football. You might, I guess, you got maybe one Thanksgiving Day game, maybe two, depending on the year. Now it's spread all throughout the week. There is TV everywhere, and for those of us who even study film these days, there's so much more of it available. You can watch football 24/7 year round now if you want to. I mean, there's just that much available. So I think it's going to be an exciting schedule all the way through, like you mentioned, especially on the holidays. Shane, anything do you jump out on this year's schedule?
Yeah. So the one thing that really jumped out to me was the sheer amount of big games or like staple games in week one. Like they're just giving it all to us right out of the gate. I mean, you got Buffalo and Los Angeles, like which should have been the Super Bowl the first night, Thursday night, and then you got games like Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. You got games like Vegas and the Chargers, the Raiders-Chargers game, rematch from the last game of the season. You got Tampa Bay at Dallas, first game of last season, and then Russ coming home to Seattle. As a Seattle fan, that's a big game for me. They're just giving it to us. They're just giving everything to us right off the gate. And I thought that stuck out the most.
I think the NFL does that better than any of the other leagues. The NBA does a pretty good job of that. Major League Baseball, I think, is way, way behind in terms of giving fans what they want for some of these things, not just schedule, but it seems to keep popping up that the NFL does a better job of making everything more accessible and giving fans what they want than any of the other North American sports really tends to do. And they seem like they've been doing that for a very long time. Anthony, want to jump in on the schedule, man? Just quick thoughts, what you felt like, first of all?
My quick thoughts are that we have a lot of great matchups this year. Obviously Mahomes, Brady in week 4. You got obviously Shane touched on it. Russell Wilson going back to Seattle, the very first week. I don't think there's a single game or a single week this year for football where you're like, there's not a big game I would want to watch. Every week there's a game like you're looking forward to. You got like the superstars versus the young guys, and then you got the GOAT versus the future. You got so many games this year that you're like, okay, I want to tune in. I want to watch this. I don't want to just, go turn on something else. I want to watch football all day long and not walk away from the screen because you're going to miss something at least. There's going to be a game during the week that is not being like televised or promoted really well, and it's going to come out to being huge. So those are kind of my thoughts.
There's only so many primetime slots, but the regular season really feeds off this past off season where we saw more big name player movement than I think we've ever seen. And it creates kind of some tension in some of these matchups that a lot of us, can't wait to get to. Let's start working our way through some of the questions for tonight. I want to start off with the toughest schedule, and you may not necessarily pinpoint who you think has the toughest, but in general, who do you think has a very tough schedule? It may be based off of last year's win percentage. It may be based off of the teams they're playing next year, what they project to be. Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and start with you this time, man. Toughest schedule on the team, or toughest team schedule this year. What you got?
For me, it's the 49ers. They're ranked 5th out of winning percentage coming into this season with the schedules. For me, the question is, who's going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Trey Lance, and does he live up to what they drafted him to be, or is it going to be Jimmy G again? You look at it, week 4, they have the Rams, a divisional rival. Then they have the Chiefs at week 7. Then week 8, Rams again. And then week 10, the Chargers. And then week 14, the Buccaneers. So they have these tough teams that they got to go up against. And with the reports recently hearing that, the 49ers are unsure about Trey Lance, it raises questions about, all right, is Trey Lance going to be the quarterback this whole season, or is Jimmy G going to step in at a point if the 49ers aren't doing well? So my question is, do we know who's going to stay the quarterback for the 49ers and go through all these games that are like big games and the tough games to help the 49ers get back to the playoffs? Or is it going to be a roller coaster ride all season long, quarterback wise, for the 49ers?
Certainly not a schedule that you want to be trying to figure out who your quarterback is during the year, right? To say the least. If whether it's the toughest, it's not what you want to be running the gauntlet with for the 49ers. Robertson, somebody that stood out to you is having a tough schedule this year.
A couple teams stood out to me, San Francisco being one of them, to kind of agree with Anthony there. But I think one of the biggest ones is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a really tough schedule. Just the first 5 weeks. They have the Cardinals week 1, Chargers week 2, Colts week 3, Buccaneers week 4. That's just the first 4 games. Those are all playoff teams or like playoff hopeful teams or Super Bowl contenders. I mean, and they play in one of the toughest divisions in football right now, the AFC West, because now you have Russell Wilson in there. Derek Carr got Devontae Adams in Oakland. I mean, just the games, you go through it. They play the 49ers. They play the Titans. They play the Rams. They play the Bengals, the Broncos twice, Raiders twice. I mean, there's so many games where it's like, especially with the loss of Tyreek Hill too. I mean, we don't really know what kind of impact that's going to have on Mahomes and the offense, but they just seem to have one of the tougher schedules. Cincinnati also has a pretty tough schedule too. They play in the AFC North, so they got to play the Ravens and Steelers twice. But they also have to play the Titans. They also have to play the Chiefs, the Buccaneers, and the Patriots, and the Bills. So that's going to be pretty tough for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. A lot of teams that lose in the Super Bowl typically don't have a great year the next year. So that's not exactly a good schedule to get back on their feet with.
You're 100% right on Cincinnati. Going back to the Chiefs for just a second, I think it's very viable that the Chiefs could either win the Super Bowl or even miss the playoffs altogether. And that might even come down to just one injury, but that schedule is so brutal. I've never seen an off season in which everybody in one division decided to be all in right now, all at once. And that's exactly what the Chargers and the Raiders and the Broncos did. They're like, hey, we got a chance at this. And that alone makes for a brutal schedule. But you mentioned all of the out-of-division opponents as well. Shane, who else this year maybe has a tough schedule that you like?
I think the Rams have the toughest schedule. I mean, they statistically have the toughest schedule based off of opponent winning percentage. I think it's 567 or something like that. But I mean, they got to match up with like the Bills, the Cowboys. I'm just looking through their schedule right now. They got the Saints, the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Packers, the Chargers, the Broncos, and then they got 6 games in the NFC West with the Niners, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. Albeit the Seahawks games probably won't be very close this season, but the other two, you don't know. It's a toss up on the they could win those games on any of those weeks. But just looking at this right now, I'm seeing they have a 5-week stretch where they play the whole AFC West and the Packers in 5 weeks at the end of the season. So that's a really rough stretch for them.
It is. And me, historically, I kind of love seeing the good teams have to go play tough schedules the next year. But it kind of highlights we see some of the same teams be bad for years and years in a row, even though the NFL gives them every opportunity to jump back into being competitive, not only with the higher draft picks, but with the easier schedule too.
Cowboys.
We see this. Yeah, exactly. We don't have the Cowboys person on here tonight, but you're exactly right.
What?
And, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, well, actually, I was going to just make a comment real quick on the Cowboys schedule. Look at the first 5 weeks there. They got the Buccaneers, the Bengals, and then they have 2 division games against New York and Washington, and then they go to play the Rams. I mean, that's a tough 5 games. Granted, what your opinion is on New York and Washington. It's still a division game. They're still division games, but one of them's on the road. So, I mean, the schedule makers did them no favors with Dak trying to adjust with new weapons and all that.
Exactly, especially with Dallas having lost a couple of pieces this year that I think Cowboys fans knew something was coming. I don't think Cowboys fans expected to lose as much as they did during this offseason as we went through. All right, so that's the toughest schedules. On the flip side, some teams get the easier breaks for whatever reason, which we won't have to go into tonight. But Robertson, I'll bounce it right back to you here. Who do you think this year has one of the easier schedules that we're looking at?
On paper, I got to go with my team, Washington. It's going to be tougher than what it is on paper just because we don't know what Carson Wentz we're getting, really. We don't know if we're getting 2020 Carson Wentz. We don't know if we're getting last year's Carson Wentz, albeit the choking at the end of the season against the Jaguars. But, I mean, the toughest game out of division, the Titans, Packers, I mean, those are the tougher games, but, I mean, no team on there really. I mean, you can say the Browns, I guess. That's if Deshaun's playing. But we don't know the state of it. It's going to be later. The Browns game is week 17, so it's possible he will be playing, but we don't know what the NFL is going to do with him. So it could either be a backup or Baker Mayfield, maybe. Who knows? I doubt he plays for them, but I look at Washington. I also look at the Detroit Lions. They, again, other than the Packers twice, who's in their division, out of division, they don't play anyone that's very imposing. Their hardest game is going to be against the Cowboys and the Patriots. So for me, those are the 2 easier schedules.
There's a tremendous amount up in the air for several teams at quarterback this year. Shane, if you have Washington as being one of the easiest, you got somebody else in mind for the easy schedule this year?
I had Washington as well. Like Robertson said, it's tougher. It's gonna be tougher during the season, but on paper, it doesn't look like it's gonna be too hard of a schedule. I'm with Washington there.
And I'm sure part of that is the Giants. We know that the Giants are on their way. They're at the bottom, working their way back up. The Cowboys, who had a good team last year, they look like they've come down a notch. The Eagles look like they've got a good team, but still there's a lot of moving pieces there in Philadelphia, so I think that certainly contributes. Anthony, anybody else you want to throw in for the easy schedule award?
I kind of agree with Shane and Robertson about it all. The Commanders, I believe, I think for the Commanders, it really shows that Carson Wentz should get the job done with one of the easiest schedules. And it also shows that he doesn't get it done, he might not be a starting quarterback for an NFL team anymore. So a lot is on the line for the Commanders this year, despite having one of the easiest schedules based off of the win percentage. And that's all on paper, obviously. But if we have to look at it right now, I believe the Commanders have the easiest schedule, but a lot to lose on the line.
Full disclosure here to the audience, I did not prep these guys for this next question at all. I'm just throwing it out there. Quick yes or no, you don't have to elaborate. Washington has an easy schedule. Ron Rivera has been there for, 3-4 seasons now. It's more than just a couple. If they don't have a competitive season in which they're actually making a playoff push, do you think Ron Rivera starts to feel the seat get pretty hot there in Washington? Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that the Commanders need to, at least they need to put him in the hot seat. I don't know if they will,
yes.
But yeah, it's a yes for me.
That's a yes from Shane. Robertson, what you got?
Save me for last.
Okay, Robertson's coming last. Anthony, yes, no?
I would say no.
Okay, that's a yes and a no. Robertson, you're the Washington guy. Tell us about it.
No, he's not going to be on the hot seat unless Carson Wentz completely implodes and we go like 4-13. With everything going on in Washington right now with Dan Snyder, he's not going to want to search for a new head coach, probably in the middle of an investigation. He's not going to want to do that. He's not going to want to blow up everything again when Ron Rivera just got everybody's people in. Should he be on the hot seat? Yeah. But will he be? Absolutely not.
And that's why we have you on here, man. All right. That's for insider stuff just like that. Okay. Weirdest thing on the schedule doesn't have to be bizarre, but just what's a quirk, what's something that maybe surprised you, what's something you thought that was interesting. Anthony, let me go ahead and jump in with you. What's something on the schedule that maybe you either didn't expect or just looked a little unusual?
For me, it was a Thanksgiving game with the Detroit Lions taking on the Buffalo Bills. For me, that's a very odd matchup to put on a Thanksgiving game with the Lions, who is up and coming, but they're the Lions. And then we have the Buffalo Bills that are our Super Bowl contenders. For me, in my eyes, on paper, I think it's going to be a massacre, basically. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be like the game when the Patriots face the Lions and just destroy them. I feel like we're going to have the same thing because, I don't see it working out as a close game or a competitive game, at least for me.
I agree, actually, as a fan. And by the way, if we're stealing somebody else's weird thing, we apologize. Just feel free to pile on in a second. I totally agree. As a fan, I'm sitting there on Thanksgiving with a full belly. It's kind of a happy day. I really don't want to see 41-10, and there's a good chance that you have a beatdown, break out there. I would much rather see, Bears versus Lions on Thanksgiving Day. If it's got to be the Lions, let it be some kind of a interdivision matchup where, you think it's going to be at least a close game. Shane, over to you, man. Anything weird on the schedule this year?
Yeah, the Germany game, the Seahawks Buccaneers game. I still am trying to figure out why they chose the Seahawks to travel from the West Coast all the way to Germany to face the Buccaneers, who are going from the very East Coast to Germany. And I just think they should have chose another East Coast team, but I guess for some reason they thought it'd be good to put the Seahawks in Germany.
I would love to be in the decision room and hear some of these people talk about some of this stuff. At least you would at least think if it's going to be the Seahawks, send somebody else from the West Coast as well, right? Somebody that would be coming out of the same time zone. Robertson, anything weird on the schedule this year for you?
I might be a little partial here, but the Washington-Philadelphia game. So obviously there's two of them since they're division rival, but the first one is week 3 in Washington. I'm not sure why it's in Washington. I mean, the schedule makers had a big opportunity to have the first Eagle game be at Lincoln Financial. Carson Wentz's big return. They could have put that on primetime. And I mean, you're pretty much guaranteeing Carson Wentz is going to be healthy, and you're pretty much guaranteeing that, I mean, that the Commanders, the Monday night matchup, the second one is in Week 10. I mean, we could be completely out of it. Carson Wentz could be injured. They could have missed a very big opportunity there in Week 10 if that is the case. So I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on that one. And plus, I mean, if just say Washington gets destroyed Week 3, that's going to destroy Carson Wentz for that game in Week 10. That's going to destroy like viewership pretty much, or at least a portion of the viewership for that Week 10 matchup. Or it could adversely, rile up the Eagle fans even more Week 10. I don't know, but I just feel like the schedule makers dropped the ball on that one.
We'll take partiality on this show as long as it's interesting. That's just fine. But your point is valid. I totally see that. Full disclosure again, I didn't prep Robertson for this question, but I do want to ask you about the stadium and the alleged, damage / repair / state of the stadium. Has that been overblown in the national media? What's the current state? How do you feel about that? Give us kind of just a real quick brief update on the stadium there.
I forget what a week it was. I feel like it was the season opener last year where like that viral video went around with the pipe burst. Everyone said, oh, it was sewage and all that. It was just a water line. I mean, not that anyone's going to care because still a pipe burst. I mean, it could have been, but it could have been worse, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're paying money to go to an NFL game, you shouldn't have to deal with that. I completely understand that. As far as the railing goes, like the railing that fell on Jalen Hurts at the end of the year, I mean, yeah, I guess, but put a couple 1,000 pounds on any railing on any NFL stadium, it's probably going to collapse. That's just my thing. It's also an older stadium now, believe it or not. So I think it's a little overblown, but at the same time, it doesn't help that Washington isn't any good any time of any season. So, I think it's overblown personally, but
Your point about the weight thing is well taken. I'm going to pull out my old man card here again. I'm old enough to remember back in the 90s when the Wisconsin Badgers had Michigan, I think, up at their stadium, and they upset Michigan that year, which was a huge deal for Wisconsin, of course. The fans are pushing on a chain link fence that actually collapses. You get enough weight, enough bodies on anything. I don't care how well you've engineered it. Human power and mass force is going to hurt that. So thank you for the update there on the schedule. Wish list time. Regardless, we all know that there's kind of a formula that the NFL follows in putting these schedules together. They really kind of get to play with the dates and the time of day or night and the channel that these games are on. But wish list time, what's not on the schedule this year that you would love to see on the schedule this year? If we could just put all the formats to the side for a second. Shane, I think I'm going to start with you, man. What's on your wish list?
So my AFC team, because I'm a Seahawks fan, my AFC team is the Chargers, and I also love Joe Burrow, and so I would have loved to see a Chargers-Bengals game.
Chargers-Bengals would have been a lot of fun, right?
It just would have made me happy.
Yes. Getting to see Herbert and Burrow go at it, yeah, that's going to be a lot. And maybe we get that in the playoffs. Who knows? I think that would be a fantastic matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony, let's talk to you for a second. What's on your wish list? If you got two things, that's fine. But what's on your wish list for the NFL schedule?
I don't think it's I haven't gotten a chance to like fully look through every schedule, but for me, if it's not on there, is definitely the rematch of the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals. That game was in the second half amazing. I would have definitely loved to see it again, but at Cincinnati instead of LA, because the Super Bowl was held in LA. So I would have loved to see it back in Cincinnati, Rams versus Bengals, just to see it again and see if the home field does make a difference or not.
The tension that was there in the third and fourth quarter of that Rams-Bengals Super Bowl, I haven't felt that. And again, I didn't even have a dog in that fight. I haven't felt that tension since the first Patriots-Giants Super Bowl, when the Patriots were undefeated that year and the Giants were, you were like, can they really pull this off? And it was so close there at the end. There was a time there in the third quarter this year, Rams-Bengals, where the Bengals were in control of that game. And if they score a touchdown, say late in the third quarter, early in the fourth, it's lights out. Cincinnati wins that game. Rams, to their credit, find a way to just keep smacking Burrow around, and they work their way back into the game and they win it. So everybody credit, but I agree. That would be a fantastic matchup as well. Robertson, again, if you got more than one thing, what's on your wish list?
Kind of going back to what Shane was saying earlier about the Germany game. If you're going to send two teams over, then at least make it interesting. And not saying that Seahawks aren't interesting to their fans, but just saying like nationally, internationally speaking, you know, if you're going to send the Buccaneers over, send the Patriots over. Make that the international game, you know, because they're two East Coast teams that kind of serves that purpose there. It's the shortest distance for both of them. Send that over. Make that the international game. You want to reach your international market, make it an interesting game. Tom Brady going up against his former team. That would be something that would get people going.
I totally agree. You stole the word right out of my mouth, but I was going to say, have a meeting with Tom Brady, which I don't know how close he is with the NFL commissioner these days. Probably not in the mood to do any favors, but have somebody from the league office sit down with Tom Brady and say, what do we need to do for you to get you to go play over in Germany this year? And oh, by the way, on your way back, you mind playing a game in London while you're at it? I mean, yes, get those biggest names, get them out there. I know it's not easy, but, you know, listen, a lot of the stuff is not easy. So I would love to see that too. All right, so those are the questions we've got. We're going to break down a handful of individual matchups. I may not talk to everybody about every matchup, but Bills at Rams, we've already alluded to this a couple of times. Big time matchup. It is the opening night of the week of the whole season, September the 8th. I think that's a Thursday night matchup, if I remember correct. Buffalo at the Rams. Robertson, I'm going to let you start off with this one real quick. What's your thoughts on that matchup?
I think you're looking at a potential Super Bowl matchup right there. Obviously, it's not going to be at the Rams Stadium again, but you're also having Von Miller returning to LA. Granted, his time was short there, but still, you know, he was a big part of their Super Bowl team, and you know he's going to probably want to try to sack Matt Stafford again. The Buffalo Bills added a pretty good bit to their defense, which was already ranked number one. But they didn't have a very good pass rush, and they added Von Miller. They also added Shaq Lawson. They also added a running back in the draft, Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook. You know, Buffalo reloaded. They're going for it this year. So actually, I'm going to take Buffalo in just a quick prediction. I'm going to take Buffalo in that game opening. I'm going to take them pretty handedly too. I think it's going to be not a blowout, but I think the Bills are going to win that pretty handedly.
Makes sense. The Rams have enough new pieces to where they might still be figuring things out. If it were deeper into the season, you might, you know, give McVay a better chance having figured things out early in the season. Yeah, I think that very well could happen. Bills certainly got a chance at a Super Bowl this year, no doubt to that. Broncos and Seahawks. Shane, I've got to talk to you about this game. This is Russell Wilson returning to Seattle. I guess, A, what kind of reception do you think he's going to get in Seattle? And then B, he's bringing, I think, the far better team into this matchup. Does Seattle have a chance in this game, Shane?
Yeah, I think there will be mixed reactions to, or mixed, I guess reactions is the right word, to him coming home. But I think for the most part, it'll be generally positive. I mean, he did win them the only Super Bowl we've had, took him to another Super Bowl. And he's done so many things in the city of Seattle, in the area. So I don't think that they'll have any negative things to say or boo at him. But as far as the game goes, I think it's going to be the Broncos. I think the Broncos will win the game. But I don't think the Seahawks will do as bad as people think they will. I am a lot higher on Drew Lock than a lot of people for some reason. And I mentioned that in the article I wrote breaking down the Seahawks schedule. But I don't know. I think the Seahawks will find a way to compete, but I do think the Broncos will still pull it out.
I think Pete Carroll is ticked off. I think he really, really, really wants to show that he can do this without Russell Wilson. They may or may not win this game, but I think Pete Carroll's going to be busting his butt all year long, and in this game in particular, to show what he can do with Drew Lock, and then we'll see what happens in 2023. Anthony, I want to talk to you about both of the next two games. They're both big-time matchups. We have the Chiefs going to the Buccaneers and the Rams at the Chargers. But let me just talk about the Chiefs and the Buccaneers first. Hopefully everybody's healthy for that game. Patrick Mahomes with Kansas City. Tom Brady, who went into retirement and spent all of 4 or 5 weeks in retirement and came back. So Tom Brady will be there. Big time matchup. Tell us about that.
For me, it's an even bigger game. But for me, it's the rematch of the Super Bowl last year. But it's going to look a little different. Mahomes is going to have Tyreek Hill. He's going to have some new weapons. But for me, it's going to show that Patrick Mahomes can be this elite quarterback without all the studs like Tyreek Hill. And he's going to be able to do it without a much offensive line or a little bit better offensive line. But for me, it's just one more crack at it for Mahomes to get to Brady, to be able to tie the personal record between each other, because Brady has it on him 3-2, including a Super Bowl. But for me, Mahomes really wants to win this game more than anything else, so that he can be like, okay, I've tied it with Brady. I beat him 3 times. He's beating me 3 times. I can live with myself and maybe have another chance in the Super Bowl to beat him. But that's kind of where I'm looking at. I think it's a bigger game for the Chiefs than it is for Tampa Bay. I think Mahomes really needs to show, okay, the last time I faced Tampa Bay in that defense, I want to forget about it. I want to show up this time and play the game that I had earlier that year in the regular season, where I almost, 200 passing yards in the first half. I think that's what Mahomes is kind of looking forward to, and the game he's kind of looking forward to all season long.
It's a point well taken, and it's an interesting thing. No matter how high you get in your profession, and no doubt Mahomes has reached the peak, there are still always people who are going to question, who are always going to compare you to somebody else, and that bothers some people. It doesn't bother others. I think, to say the least, you're right. Mahomes would like to kind of get up to 3-3 here with Brady in personal matchups, just to kind of put down the naysayers a little bit, and people who are pointing out that they've only actually won 1 Super Bowl so far, despite a very good roster. Anthony, I'm going to stick with you here for a second. The Rams and the Chargers, another big time matchup. I think it's a night game. It's under the lights. I think it's on New Year's night, so January the 1st. It'll be actually that night, which will add to the excitement. Everybody should be over their New Year's Eve hangover by that point. And the Rams at the Chargers. I don't think these two teams especially like each other, but walk us through this matchup just a little bit, Rams and Chargers.
For me, it's a battle for LA. Obviously the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, so they got the upper hand. And they share the same stadium, so there's that rivalry clashing. But for me, it's Justin Herbert versus Matt Stafford. And the Rams defense versus the Chargers defense. The Chargers defense got even better this year, getting Khalil Mack. That, with them being able to, at least get close to the level the Rams defense is at with Ramsey and Donald. For me, I think the Chargers have a great chance in this game. I believe the Chargers could battle the Rams at any given time, but Chargers do end up losing this game. I truly feel like nothing really for the Chargers to do, because you have to beat the team that just won the Super Bowl in your stadium. For me, if you can do that, then you can be like, okay, half of the LA is Chargers fans and half of it's Rams fans, instead of it being clear-cut Rams like it is for the Lakers and the Clippers. This is kind of the same thing. Clippers, Lakers, big brother, little brother thing, and now it's the Rams, Chargers, big brother, little brother thing. I feel like this is a must-win game for the Chargers, instead of being like, okay, I'm going to be that little brother. I'm going to maybe win a playoff game, but I'm never going to win that Super Bowl. So I think this is the biggest game for the Chargers all season long.
There might be bigger games somewhere on the, maybe Chiefs Bucks is bigger. There might be games with higher stakes by the end of the year. I don't think there's a more fun game on the schedule this year than the Rams and the Chargers, who play in the same stadium, who they're out there in LA. It'll be New Year's Day night. I think it's just going to be a fun atmosphere. I think everybody's just going to enjoy this game at the end of New Year's Day. I think it's going to be just a ton of fun. Probably can't get a better game in terms of just fun. Shane, I want to talk to you about Washington and the Vikings, and then I've been saving Robertson here because we've got 3 more games that involve Washington. So Robertson's in the on deck circle. We're going to hit him hard for this last portion here. But Shane, I want to talk to you about Vikings and Washington. Kirk Cousins returning to with the Vikings to Washington. How big of a deal is that? What do you think we can see out of the Vikings-Washington matchup?
I think it'll be fun. I definitely think Kirk Cousins and the Vikings have the upper hand, as I think they're the more well-rounded roster and have more talent throughout their whole team. But I definitely see it being a good game. I don't think it'll be a blowout by any chance. I think the Vikings will win simply because they have Dalvin Cook. They got two of the top receivers in the NFC. They have an improving defense, and Kirk Cousins seems to get the job done somehow, some way, miraculously. So, but it'll definitely be a good matchup.
I love Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. Just absolutely love watching him play. Robertson, this is right up your alley here, talking about Washington. I am curious, and I don't remember how long it's been since Kirk Cousins was even at Washington. How much emotions are actually involved here as Kirk Cousins makes his return? Is it a high stakes game, or has it been so long that Washington won't even have a lot of emotions here? Tell us about that.
There's going to be emotions, but not the warm, fuzzy ones that you're thinking of there. So as I detailed in my article in the schedule breakdown for Washington, there's going to be a large number of Washington fans that are going to have their opinions reinforced based on Kirk Cousins' performance and the outcome of the game. Whether he wins, loses, throws 4 picks, throws 4 touchdowns, it doesn't matter what he does. Hundreds of thousands of Washington fans are going to have their opinion reinforced because it's that polarizing of a topic here. It's been like 4 years and people still argue about it. It's going to be the lead up to the game is going to be more exciting and more like drama filled than the actual game itself.
Wow. Okay, that's even more than I thought. I thought perhaps maybe 4 years later, but no, it's going to be a lot more emotion there than we realize. Okay. Well, next game again, we're going to stick on your team. Washington does have an unusual kind of a setup this year. The Washington Commanders are heading to Philadelphia, and that will mark Carson Wentz's return, if healthy, back to Philadelphia. I'm sure 100% there's going to be a lot of emotions here, especially from Philadelphia fans. But tell us about that a little bit.
Again, as I detailed in my article, there's going to be a lot of, and especially since this is Monday Night Football, so there's going to be a lot of stadium shots outside in the parking lot and all that. There's going to be Carson Wentz jerseys that are being burned. There's going to be a lot of booing. I'm sure ESPN is going to get that pretty well when Commanders take the field. It's going to be an emotional time for Eagle fans because, they can't stand him now. And I see it as Carson Wentz is going to choke. I don't know how he's going to play this season, but I think there's going to be an opportunity in this game for Carson Wentz to take over, and he's not going to.
Shane, I'm going to hit you up real quick before we go back to Robertson for the third Washington game. Talking about Philadelphia, is there a worse city to make an enemy of than the city of Philadelphia? I know there's a couple more out there, but in your opinion, is that the one city that you don't want to make an enemy of, or is there a worse one, Shane?
No, that's pretty much top of the list of cities you don't want to become an enemy of. I mean, from the Eagles to the 76ers to the Phillies, you just add up the Philadelphia fans, you don't want to be on their bad side.
The city of brotherly love, I think they also have the ability emotionally to go to the extreme opposite very quickly whenever they need to.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
All right, Robertson, back to you. And Anthony, I will touch up on this with you as well, Anthony, here in a second. But Robertson, Washington and the Colts. So this is another semi-interesting matchup, which Carson Wentz is making a lot of return visits this year to places. It's the Carson Wentz return tour. But Carson Wentz is returning to Indianapolis. I'm sure it's not the same as going back to Philadelphia, but what do you think the reaction will be when Carson Wentz heads back to Indianapolis, and what do you think the game itself might look like?
I mean, you touched on it. I mean, this whole season is pretty much a Carson Wentz revenge tour. There's just so many rematches. Even week 1 against the Jaguars, that's the team that bounced him out of the playoffs. So going back to Indy, there's going to be a lot of negative reaction, not as much as he will get from going back to Philly. But I think this is much more of a Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew, general manager for Washington Commanders. It's going to be much more of their game than it is Carson Wentz's game because they put a lot on the line to trade for him. They traded a second and third round pick for him. They took on all his salary. I mean, if they win this game and Carson Wentz even plays decent, then that's just kind of like, reinforcing their opinion on him. Then that just proves them right and Indianapolis wrong for the week. But, I don't think it's as much as Carson Wentz is about the Washington front office and the Indy front office, because Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, Jim Irsay, they've all come out ever since the trade, even before the trade happened. They just keep trashing Carson Wentz left and right, which I've never seen from a front office about a player that's never done anything wrong off the field. You know what I mean? Or in the locker room. I mean, we don't know what goes on in the locker room, but it doesn't seem like anything terrible happened in there. So I feel like this is kind of unprecedented territory for an NFL front office.
It is. I'm sure I could pull up a name if I studied hard, but no name is coming to mind, like you just said, where there's nothing obvious that he has done that really turns on the vitriol from so many, I shouldn't say a certain number of former coaches and teammates, but Carson Wentz seems to be able to tick off a number of people in private, even though in public it doesn't seem to be obvious why. Anthony, any thoughts or opinions on Washington versus the Colts, Carson Wentz himself, or Wentz going back to Indianapolis?
For me, it goes all the way back to Philly. Like everyone's saying, it's a revenge tour for him. It all dates back to when Nick Foles won the Super Bowl as a backup. I think that really rocked him. Carson Wentz was having an MVP season, tears his ACL, and then everything just goes wrong. And then I believe mentally, he just never got back to what he truly was, and he never believed that he could get back there. I truly felt like he was always having to look over his shoulder, and then he was just always making mistakes. But for me, I don't really fault the Colts for trashing or getting upset with Carson Wentz. All you had to do was win one game and you get into the playoffs. And for you to not win 2 weeks, the first week, all right, it's the Raiders, that's fine. But you losing to Jacksonville and it's not being close is very upsetting. And if I was Colts fans and if I was in the front office of the Colts, I would be like, listen, we traded for you, we took your salary, and you can't win the big game for us. That all we needed was to get into the playoffs. And face Jackson, and just to beat Jacksonville, that isn't a team that is that competitive. For you to lose, and not just lose, but really lose, I think that rubbed them the wrong way, because it showed that they put all their trust into Carson Wentz, and he didn't come out fully what they thought he was going to be. And I feel like it really made the Colts be like, we can't have that ever again, and we're upset that all we had to do was win one game. So that's kind of how I feel.
That Jacksonville game was brutal, absolutely brutal, to basically a no-show. That was a brutal exit there. All right, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to hit each of you one more time. What's something that we haven't talked about, or something that you just want to hammer again that we kind of glossed over? Shane, I'll start off with you. What's something that we didn't cover tonight on the schedule?
I don't know. I think we got pretty much everything I was really tuned into. The big four we talked about: the Bills, Rams, Broncos, Seahawks, Chiefs, Bucks, and the Rams Chargers games were the ones that really stuck out throughout the whole season to me the most. So I think I'm good on my end. Basically,
what Shane is saying is that since Seattle's really not going to be competitive this year, he doesn't care about the rest of the NFL schedule this year.
Basically, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You can just sleep your way through the rest of it. It doesn't matter. The whole Tom Brady stuff, the Bills, who cares, right?
Seahawks aren't playing in prime time. It's not a big deal.
Right. Okay. All right, Robertson, what's something maybe we just didn't cover too fast tonight that you want to finalize on?
Yeah, I actually want to take a quick look at Miami's schedule. No one really thinks about them, but they actually have a lot of pressure on them, especially Tua Tagovailoa. They have a decent schedule. It's not too difficult. I mean, it's not easy, but for a team that, especially their fans, they have playoff hopes. They have games against the Bengals, they have games against the Packers, the Bills. These are some big games, and they're going to be measuring sticks for Tua and for the Dolphins. So, I mean, it's this is going to be a pretty big season, and plus with the addition of Tyreek Hill, there's no more excuses for Tua, and this is a big season, and there are going to be some tough games, but they have the opportunity. They really do have the opportunity.
Absolutely. Beautiful point. And to top onto that, I think Chris Greer, same thing. I think the general manager for the Dolphins, I think there's pressure on him. It's very unusual. It almost feels like the Dolphins hit the reset button this year by letting go of Brian Flores and then adding quite a few big name free agents. But I don't think it would surprise anybody if this season goes south really badly this year, that we could see another reset next off season with Tua being gone and with Chris Greer being gone, and another do-over, another rebuild, depending on what happens this year. So I totally agree. Lots of pressure there in Miami, but lots of winnable games, especially when you're looking at the Patriots twice, who are good but not dominating, and you have the Jets twice, who, again, they might compete, they might not. We'll see. So pressure's on there in Miami. Anthony, wrap us up here, man. What's left on the schedule that we haven't talked about?
For me, it's the Halloween night. Bengals versus Browns. Hopefully Watson is there so we can see Deshaun versus Joe Burrow. I think those two quarterbacks facing off, it would be amazing. It's going to be an offensive type game. Also, you have Jamar Chase coming back from the rookie of the year season that he had, which was unbelievable. And it's the AFC North rivalry. As a Steelers fan, I know that division really well. All those teams hate each other, and like with a passion. It's like the Philly fans to Carson Wentz. They absolutely hate each other. So to see it on Halloween night with the brown and black and orange, all those colors, it really like spices up Halloween. Then what? So it really spices up Halloween. But hopefully we can see Watson versus Joe Burrow, because I think that quarterback duo would be tremendous to watch. And just to see an offensive scoring game. Maybe it could get to the 54-51 Rams-Chiefs game that one night. But just to see them two facing off, I think it would be amazing to watch on Halloween.
Totally agree. And, playing on Halloween night just kind of adds to it, all of the, the decorations that go with it, all of the drama that seems to go with it as well. All right, guys, excellent show. This has been wonderful. I have enjoyed every bit of it. This is Fantom Sports. You've seen Shane, our illustrious owner, Shane Davis. You can catch Anthony and Robertson both. Their articles are all over and will continue to be all over Fantom Sports. They write about the NFL, but Fantom Sports also has a ton of articles about all kinds of different sports, and then all through the NFL offseason, and then especially as we dive into the regular season, you'll see it crank up even more. So by all means, go over there and check us out on Fantom Sports. Thank you to Joey, who does the videography work for us as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time on Fantom Sports. Have a great one. Bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.